Hey Deepak, very happy to have you. Thank you for taking out the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Abhay. Thank you for having me here.
Deepak, can you introduce yourself to our audience? Who is Deepak Garg?
Yeah, so quick background. I started my career with McKinsey. Was there for 8 years. Then I built Rivigo in 2014 as a tech logistics company. We pioneered a lot of global innovations in India using relay trucking model, a lot of patented technology, and disrupting the long haul trucking market in India. Sold the company to Mahindra in 2022 and built another company in Europe, largely with a Rivigo approach, but mostly figuring out this idea around big gap in blue collar workforce in the Western world and creating a bridge with India, which is a demographic surplus. And I'm very passionate about the thesis anyway. I think Asia has a lot of surplus, Asia and Africa, and Europe and North America has a lot of demand deficit for blue collar, and there are proper legal good pathways that can be created, and it can lead to huge opportunities for everyone, right? It can solve a lot of problems. So I started that, and uh, as I started that, I also started investing in Bitcoin. This is in 2022. Uh, November 2022 is the first time I sort of invested. So I was very late into Bitcoin because I never got the time to, while I was running Rivigo, I had no time. November
You were too
2022
busy
was,
to look at
yeah,
Bitcoin.
yeah, November 2022 was the first month I was not doing Rivigo, right? And so that's the first month I started investing more time in Bitcoin. I bought my first Bitcoin. And then when I was investing, I also went a lot deeper into not just the technology aspect of Bitcoin, but also trying to understand why it exists, will it exist in future, what's the history of money. From every angle I started to cover. And it was a very nice journey because I'm a student of macro. I have always been interested in macro, right, from McKinsey days and even student days. So it fed into that passion of studying macro, history, game theory, psychology, all of that. And ended up spending few thousand hours over the last few years and invested in Bitcoin, researched in Bitcoin, met a lot of great people in the space. And very recently, few months ago, started a hedge fund called Satoshi Wealth with Vivek Pava, who's also a Bitcoiner since 8, 9 years and is managing his family money. And both of us have a unique thesis, unique view. We're doing a lot of research. It's a research backed hedge fund, Bitcoin only hedge fund. Um, so we are
That's
very
great.
excited about that. Yeah, we're very excited about the journey. And Satoshi Well, the way it came across was 2023 or 2020, early 2024. I got convinced that we were going to measure our wealth in Satoshis and not dollars anymore.
Really?
And if you're going to measure our wealth in Satoshis, I might rather, I'll just check if satoshiwealth.com is available, and thankfully it was at a certain cost. So I'll take it and do something in it, in future. I had no clue what will I do, but then when I met Vivek, I thought, why don't we use this and build something here as a hedge fund, right? So that's how it came about.
That's great. That's amazing and fascinating. From McKinsey to building a logistics company, having exited to Mahindra, generally, such successful people in the fiat world are unable to see Bitcoin. So, what do you think is different that help you see Bitcoin?
So look, I think most tech entrepreneurs are forward looking, right? They have this uh, vision or insight into the future. Most of them, right? And they are not building for today. They're building for solving a problem for the future, right? If you apply the same lens to the macro situation of the world or to the most fundamental thing we have in our life, which is money, then you think there's a very high possibility of a future where Bitcoin is a very real thing, right? So, but it needs various lenses to be applied. Analytical mind cannot truly lead to every answer, right? So you need a little bit of intuition. You need an analytical bent of mind. To that analytical bent of mind, you have to look at various frameworks of history, economics, of properties of Bitcoin, of technology. Why gold existed, etc. But there's of course a little bit of intuition also involved in everything you do, in every leap you take,
Yeah.
right? So in fact, I would say it's easier for entrepreneurs to take a bet on Bitcoin than otherwise, because they're anyway, they like to peek into the future. They bet into bet on the in something which is a future. But it does take some time. Bitcoin does not come very naturally to you because it's addressing something so core, like money, and so core store of value. We don't think about it in our usual life, right?
Yeah.
We think a lot about our transactional problems,
Yeah.
but we always think this whole global macro problem is not my problem. It's always increasing. So we've not never we don't spend time. I think the moment people start spending time, they in a few hundred hours they get to a point that there's something to be done here.
So, was there a eureka moment for you of saying, "Hey, this seems there's something in there"? And then, what is your thesis on Bitcoin? Why does it excite you to build a company on Bitcoin?
So look, I was while I invested in Bitcoin in 2022, of course, I was not an ostrich. I knew about a little bit about the space. In 2015, 16, 17, I remember, uh, uh, I first understood the blockchain technology, and I thought it's a very nice technology. Intuitively, I felt that this technology has a big future because of the fact that it has so many parallels to the way nature is existing today,
Okay.
right? In a decentralized way. There's a ledger, there's a whole, if you believe in the whole, theory of evolution or karma or whichever, you will end up believing that there's a lot of information storage happening in the nature in a very decentralized manner, right?
Okay.
And that information is getting recalled, in different
Okay.
formats, right? So that thing can be only like it's very similar to blockchain, right? I mean, a decentralized ledger with information storage which can be recalled. So in fact, I said something like, at that point in time I was reading all these Vedas and Upanishads. I was passionately kind of reading them, and I wrote a note about, blockchain technology seems very similar to what, Vedas talk about how the universe exists, right? And there's a base information theory, and how it's decentralized and all of that. So, from that time I was fascinated. So I have this intuitive feeling that blockchain technology is the future, because the future is about less friction. Future is about decentralization. Future is about less hierarchy, less authority, right?
Let me stop you a little bit. Can you explain a little more? While I love the path that you picked, and that nature is decentralized, and there is some information storage on nature. Can you expand a little bit of
Yeah,
how
so
yeah.
yeah, I mean, my fundamental view in life is, we as humans are evolving ourselves into what nature is, and nature is very advanced technology.
Okay.
uh, like there's a statement called, the nature is the most advanced technology known to mankind, right? So all uh, all what we are trying to do is, all technologies, if you see, are trying to uh, understand the true nature of reality and trying to mimic them, right?
Hmm.
um, when we are building artificial intelligence, we're trying to mimic what already exists. It's not like we're building,
Yeah.
beyond
Human
it.
mind, maybe. Yeah.
We are trying to mimic what human brain does with the same level of efficacy and this thing.
Yeah.
And human brain is much more advanced. It consumes much lesser energy for the amount of
Then the
inference it
data
does.
centers that we are trying to build with nuclear power.
Amount of inference it does, and over time, over let's say 50, 100 years of evolution, or 200 years of evolution, a few hundred years of evolution, we'll also keep reducing the energy consumed per inference, and that's how we'll get closer and closer to human mind, right? That's one example. But everything, I think, this whole the way we are communicating, all of that, right? And we are trying to, get to what nature does best, right? If you the same way, I think there's a theory which says, information is the base layer of nature, of the universe, right? We are basically processing information,
Hmm.
and we are trying to discover what's true and false, while processing that information.
Okay.
When we find out truth, we are aligned with universe, nature. When it's false, we are not. Okay.
Okay.
The more aligned we are, we then basically that's when all the desires and all drop, right? So that's the information. Universe is an information layer, so that's a basic kind of theory. If you now take it further and go into various, if you believe in reincarnation or karmic,
Hmm.
this thing, how do karmic imprints exist? How is it so perfect that uh, how does it, how is that information stored?
Yeah.
It's stored in some ledger in a decentralized way, right? And so there is that whole aspect of this something, this universe is working on its own in a decentralized way. There's some, you know, uh,
And what's your bridge from here to Bitcoin?
no, so no, Bitcoin. So this is a separate. I believe in blockchain technology and the future of blockchain technology. I don't invest in anything in blockchain, but I believe in the technology itself. That's what I was trying to say. There was one, yeah, aha, and during that time, I also felt intuitively that, uh, and also as a student of history, this is in late uh, 2017-18. I had written an article around how 90th anniversary of Bretton Woods happen in mid 2030s,
Hmm.
and there will be an alternate reserve or a commodity, and
Okay.
that
And
was the
why?
thought.
How,
On
what
the 90 year,
historical
on the 90,
understanding?
yeah, on the 90 year, of course. I mean, if you look at, I mean, Ray Dalio has
Yeah.
made it very popular and been a master communicator on that topic. But if you look at the history of empires, all empires have been existing for 250 years. Last 90 years, first kind of 80, 90 years are about, you know freedom fighters coming together, building building the, economy, empire, all of that, right? Just, building institutions. Next 90 years is about productivity, technology, progress, economic expansion, high GDP growth rate, gaining the power, military power and economic power in the world, right?
Okay.
And then the 90 years after that are about, so the 90 years of that, for US was 1860 to 1940s, let's say, right? And then
Okay.
90 years is when you're established as a power.
Hmm.
You want to monetize that situation. You want to
Hmm.
monetize that military and economic power. Monetization happens the fact that your people enjoy a lot of comfort. You run trade deficits. You're a consuming nation. You're an indebted nation. But since you're a powerful reserve currency, to give that military protection, you are actually extracting a lot from the world, right? So that's what US has done over the last 90 years. Right. So it has happened not just once, it has happened many, many times over. Right. It happened with the UK. In 1920s, people used to say the sun will never set on the empire. The sun never sets on the empire. But by 1945, it did not exist. So it's an empire stretched themselves, providing this military umbrella, running this trade deficit, running this budget deficit, and their populations get lazy. They get lazy, they run debts, and then they can't. They get to a point where the debt is too high, and then the empire is not able to manage, and the empire starts to contract, like the way US is trying to be an inward
Ah.
economy and want to contract. Right? It happened with Spain. I read the history of Spain. It happened with UK. It happened with Netherlands. It happened with every other big empire. So that whole idea or thinking was there. I'm a big believer of cycle theory, that
Hmm.
everything happens in cycle. So I'm a student of that cycle theory. I, for example, follow Edward Dewey's. Edward Dewey was a father or founding father of cycle theory, right?
Okay.
Um, there's a book called Cycles Prediction, Cycles Science of Prediction. It
Okay.
is a it's a seminal book Edward Dewey wrote. Edward Dewey was a chief economist in Department of Commerce during President Hanover's time in 1930s, and he he wrote about cycles for almost 10,000 things in the world, right? And he found that cycles are actually existing in almost everything,
Hmm.
right? From why a particular fruit grows for particular years and then it does not grow and then it grows and all of that. A salmon in Canada, this river, increases population, and then why is there a 4 year cycle of this particular fish in this river in Canada, to the economic cycles, to geopolitical cycles, to everything, right? So he wrote a lot about it. He wrote about immigration cycle. He wrote about a real estate cycle, all of those, and there was a lot of data available because he was chief economist of in Department of Commerce in the US, so there was a lot of data available. And look, I mean, there's a lot of critique of cycles as well, but by and large, cycles do hold for almost everything, right? And we don't know why they exist. And there's a theory Dewey postulated on why they exist, and there were 4 or 5 points to that theory. And one of the points was that one of his point was there's a humans feel optimistic and pessimistic at the same time, and we don't know why.
Okay.
For example, at the same time people feel optimistic about certain thing, and then gold prices kind of runs up or whatever, right? And at a certain point in time, you know everyone feels pessimistic and stops investing in the economy and turns bearish and this thing, right? And there is no, by the way, there is no economic theory to really postulate why business cycles exist. It's still a research topic.
Hmm.
A lot of people every year do PhD on this topic. No one knows why the cycles exist, why the business cycles exist. No one knows. If people get to know why business cycles exist, I'm sure they'll be able to avoid them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll able to diagnose it and figure out, and then they will try to take out this pain from life. But they haven't been able to, right? There are still downturns, there are still recessions, there are still bull markets, there are still bear markets. Cycles exist, and it's all neatly related to human nature. Why humans feel that, again, is a very different topic, and there's a lot of correlations he did, etc., etc. One of the topics of correlation of his, topic during his later years was it's correlated, and he didn't say causality, correlated to planetary cycles, right? So
Ah.
he correlated a lot to Moon, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, whatever, and said, like why the 90-year cycle exists, why the 18-year cycle exists, why the 54-year cycle is. For example, for wholesale prices, he talks about 54-year cycle. In
Okay.
general economy or a wholesale prices, commodity prices, a 54-year cycle. And sometimes you feel, that maybe he was not all wrong, right? Because like if you look at the gold today, 2025,
Hmm.
in 1971, when gold peg was removed by Nixon on 15th August 1971, then got into stagflation. America got into stagflation that decade, entire decade. And a lot of money printing happened. Inflation was high, unemployment was also high, misery index was high. But gold went up 25x during that decade, from 1970,
25x.
25x.
Wow.
And silver went up 40x. So sometimes you feel, and there was disregard, very similar to what President Trump is doing. There was disregard for Fed, this was disregard for institutions. There was distrust in dollar.
Hmm.
So if you look at that and you marry a Dewey cycle of 54 years, you get to a same view, a very similar view, that there's a distrust in dollar.
Yeah.
US is trying to not be the grandfather of the world
Yeah.
while having maintaining the same tone, but still
Yeah.
want to be a domestic and contained economy. does not want to provide military umbrella, wants to mind his own business, its own business, want to balance budget, wants to balance trade, wants to reshore manufacturing, wants to produce its own military equipment, wants to manufacture, wants to create job for its people. Right? That's the Make America Great Again movement, right?
Yeah.
And with all the inequality led by COVID, and it started in 2008 by all the QE and
Hmm.
aggravated by COVID. US is hugely unequal, right? I mean, the stock market phenomena impacts less than 10% people.
Yeah.
90% people are not even participants of stock market. And if you see, other than the pockets of coastal areas, very few, where you live and where, like few people live. So other than that, and the US is very different
Yeah.
version of what we know as US, right? And it all leads to an environment where there are civil unrest and where
Mm.
the fault lines are very deep inside. To protect against those fault lines, you have to take on wars outside because you have to show yourself as one America, and therefore distract people, take take on more wars. So this is an era of technological disruption, civil wars, revolutions, external wars, debt debasement, which is all being spoken about by Ray Dalio
Yeah.
many years ago. In fact, he's been talking about it for the last 10 years. But it's all happening right in front of us now, and it's going to accelerate for the next 7 8 years. Has it happened before every 84 years? Yes, it has happened every 84 years. Why has it happened every 84 years? No one knows. 1861, 1941, now very similar time frames of very high fault lines, debt debasement, all of that. So this is an environment, of course. I mean, if you're not investing in hard assets like Bitcoin or gold, uh, or commodities or metals, then you're taking risk, right? I mean, yes, stock market is high. It's also very frothy. It's also led largely by seven companies in the world. US is now 60% of the stock market of the world. In US, all the growth has been delivered by these seven companies. Two companies in the world are actually more than 8 9% of the total market cap of the world,
Yeah.
Nvidia and Microsoft. These are very fragile, equity markets. People who missed the tech bus have missed out, but there are very few people involved in the tech bus, right? Already. So the inequality is very high, and therefore, I think this something Bitcoin's fundamental property is very appealing. It is, why is gold gold? Gold is gold because of the fundamental property of gold. Gold is the best store of value known to human mankind for the last 5 7,000 years. Right? It's scarce. It holds value. It holds value for generations. It does not rust, corrode. And it has no use. Therefore, it is a store of value. It's a best use is a store of value. It can be passed on to generations, right? And and Bitcoin has lesser stock to flow ratio than gold. Bitcoin stock to flow ratio is 0.8%. Gold stock to flow ratio is 1.6% today. So even if you hold gold, your value is leaking by
Mm.
less than dollar. Dollar is leaking by 8% because new 8% new dollars are getting created every year. 12% new INR is getting created every year. So if you hold INR, you're losing by 12% every year because your wealth is getting devalued by 12% every year because new INR is getting created by every year. Dollar is 8, yuan is 10, silver is 6, copper is 10, gold is 1.6. So Bitcoin is zero point 0.8 today, and Bitcoin is zero point 0.8 today, and every 4 years it's halving. So Bitcoin is tending to zero. So truly, there's one commodity which has zero supply inflation,
Mm.
which is 21 million, which is fixed supply, which does not corrode, rust, stores value because it's digital, which also, by the way, is auditable, verifiable, immutable, and you can transfer value easy compared to any other thing in the world. So, so to that extent, I think there have been very, very uh, very few times in the history of the world when gold was not a major store of value.
Correct.
It was
For
very, very
maybe
few.
4 5,000 years, gold has been the major store of value. It's just
Yes,
been maybe some blips of history in between.
yes, and that too, it happened in the last phase of the empire when the empire gets greedy and dilutes its currency by either diluting the content of the gold or silver or whatever, because the people who print that money
Hmm.
get greedy, and their friends get greedy, and they keep diluting. If you see, if you read history of Roman, the
Yeah,
end of Roman Empire,
yeah.
right? Denari was diluted uh, over over a period of 20 30 years to by they kept diluting the silver in the silver content in denari, right? So it happened many times over, right? Whenever so but you're right, 90% of the times gold has been the base layer of store of value for kingdoms,
So why would
empires.
this year, this time be different? And could this time be gold again? Or and why do you think Bitcoin
I
could be
Great
a part
question.
of it?
Yeah, great question. And I don't say that I have a maxi or a strong view on it, right? I like both gold and Bitcoin, right?
Okay,
To me, if you like Bitcoin, you can't be someone who doesn't like gold, all right?
correct.
And if you like gold, you can't be someone who doesn't like Bitcoin. To me, both are very similar because both have very similar properties. One is physical, one is digital. All right, that's how I think of it. Okay, if you're a little traditional minded and you think gold has been there for 5,000 years, you know you take a bet on gold. But if you are saying, let's say, hey, the world is changing, we are being becoming digital beings, uh, and in the AI world, how will AI agents? What will be the store of value for AI agents? Would it be gold? Then you think no, and there's a leap of faith required, right? Analytical, I say you can only go so far. There's a leap of faith required. Bitcoin adoption has challenges. It's not like it's all clean, it's all clear. US is betting big on Bitcoin,
Hmm.
but China is not. The BRICS is not. And now Bitcoin is seen as a US idea and not as a global idea, right? Which is a disservice to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a genius idea in itself. It's an idea everyone should adopt and spend time on all of that. But it's getting polarized. That's something which is unfair, but it's a journey of Bitcoin. Over 5 years, 10 years, that polarization may go away, and China could be the biggest supporter of Bitcoin. You never know. But for now, yes, I mean, there are two camps in the world where, one camp is betting, in terms of governments, I'm saying, one camp is betting on Bitcoin, America and its allies, and all of these small countries, Bhutan, El Salvador, African countries, South American countries. And there's this other camp in the world, Russia, India, China, many such countries who are betting big on gold. Individuals also, of course, people have more holdings of gold and Bitcoin because gold has a 5,000 year history, so a traditional safety lens to it. The other framework I apply is, you think of what's going to happen 100 years later.
Okay.
100 साल सोचो तो if you think 100 years later and then you draw the line back, and 100 years later, we are like, think of a world 100 years later,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of abundance, all the material needs are completed. uh, a large part of energy is solar energy. um, AI agents, robots, or a lot of intelligence around us. Human beings are doing more, regulatory, moral, setting ethical standards for AI agents to operate. Creative sciences, Renaissance period, arts, leisure, space travel, leisure space travel. All of these things are happening. There's also possibility that we have a Mars, we have a colony on Mars, with 1 million people or so, right? Very high possibility, right? And
Yeah.
100 years later, we have how do we transact with this colony on Mars, right? It can't be gold. It takes too long. It has to be, it has to be something digital, and something can be transported over a network. राइट सो तो उसमें मुझे लगता है एआई एजेंट स्मार्ट स्पेस एवरीथिंग आई थिंक बिटकॉइन इज everything is digital, then of course your money or store of value also has to be digital. There's no doubt about it.
It's
And then you,
fascinating of how you've connected from nature decentralization to your understanding of cycle theory and history to today's Bitcoin. So let's say that I'm a young entrepreneur and I'm busy like you were busy in 2022, and I'm zero allocation on Bitcoin and I'm full heads down on building my business. What is your advice for that person related to Bitcoin and
I
why?
yeah, great question, Abhay. I think I wish I had some time in 2014, 15 to study Bitcoin. And look, if you're a young entrepreneur who's very busy, uh, it's it's a topic worth spending 5-10 hours on and getting comfortable with it, because you can't do something with a borrowed conviction. You have to have some conviction. The only issue with Bitcoin is Bitcoin dawns on you fully after spending first 100 hours. 5-10 5-10 hours is also a little less, right? Compared to that. But I think entrepreneurs are smart. They can get onto good networks and they can get to people like yourself and others who can actually take them through the journey faster. But it's something which should not be missed, because see, Bitcoin is growing really fast,
Hmm.
and our belief is next 20-30 years it's going to beat all other asset classes,
Okay.
annual return. uh, Power law trend line holds now. It has been holding 16 years. If you believe power law will hold in M2 terms, then Bitcoin is still giving a 40-45% KGA from here on, right? And then 10 years later, it's giving a 27-28% KGA. 20 years later, it's giving a 17% KGA. So it's a very high alpha asset. The value one is creating as in entrepreneurship through innovation and hard work can be better preserved, or an equal amount of value can be created through Bitcoin as well, is what I think. If it is if it is understood well by
Got it.
people, so it's worth spending time on. This is the highest ROI activity one can do.
Got it. And if I'm allocating, because even as a busy entrepreneur, I'm allocating some of my surplus to traditional assets like stocks and bonds and real estate. What would be your advice to get off zero and get some allocation, even if you don't spend the 100 hours? Because I don't think many people will spend the 100 hours very quickly.
Yeah, I think, see, most IRAs now in US are advocating 2 to 5% allocation to
Okay.
Bitcoin, right? So I think starting at 2% is the right number. 2 to 5% is the right number allocation. Uh,
And if
if you
I'm
had
thinking I'm at zero, I don't understand this, I don't have the time, I'm making good money, I will make my business go to the next level, my equity will be valuable, versus someone else who's doing all of that plus doing 2% allocation. What do you think would be the net worth impact in a 10-year time frame? 2035, entrepreneur
It's
A versus entrepreneur
of
B.
course it's massive, right? I mean, you can do the math. If the Kager is whatever I spoke about versus, let's say, a passive equity Kager, it's massive. It's the it's the the this 2%, 5% can be 50% of your portfolio. All right, so it's huge. Uh,
Got it.
so
So if
not taking a bet on Bitcoin is a risk. Not taking that allocation is a risk in my view.
got
If
it.
you don't take that risk, then you are diluting a lot of wealth in Bitcoin terms, right?
So not buying Bitcoin is a higher risk than buying Bitcoin. So example, if you are not convinced, you don't have the time, then also making a 2% allocation might be lesser risk than being at
Yeah,
0% on
yeah,
Bitcoin.
I think so. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's very well put. And we've seen so many like hacks and crypto exchanges seem like get rich quick scheme versus versus Bitcoin seems to be a little older and something which was started earlier, and generally technology thinks the later version is the better version. So what is your thought on that? Should I as a person who's trying to look at this, look at the latest meme coin and the latest innovation of it, or should I spend some time on understanding Bitcoin and why?
So Bitcoin is a store of value, right? And all the new technologies that are coming in blockchain are either improving the speed or the cost of transacting on blockchain. Bitcoin is not to be looked at as a currency to transact, but more as a store of value. And everything else that is coming as innovations that are coming are solving for a particular use case of blockchain, whether it's tokenization or DeFi or whatever it is. So those two has to be think of it separately. The way I think of it is Bitcoin as a store of value, and as so compared to gold, and crypto as equivalent of stocks as early stage venture bets on something that's getting created in blockchain, right? And some of these projects are doing massive revenue. All the new, this year Dex has been the new high, right? Dex has been created lots and lots of revenue. The Hyperliquid's revenue is huge. It's few $1 million a day. It's a $1 billion revenue business. So it's huge, right? So those are interesting equity bets. Someone can take it, but then there's always disruption to equity. Equity is exponential, so equity exponential things always die over time, right? And new things come up. Like now there's Aster and Apex and many other things that have come up. Hyperliquid were attacking Hyperliquid. So Hyperliquid may not be the best performing, let's say 4 years later. So you'll have to keep watching for it. But for Bitcoin is earlier is a solid technology. The use case is store of value. The use case is not continuous innovation or revolution in a technology. The use case is actually store of value, right? So to that extent, I find it safe to park my money in a store of value versus this thing. If I was really actively involved in chasing these exponential gains, and some will be hits and some will be misses. But Bitcoin is a really conservative risk free asset compared to gold. That's how I think of it. So look, Bitcoin at the core has never been hacked or never been this thing, right? The whatever hacks or whatever news that has come up is only on the exchanges or some get rich quick schemes and all of that, right? So uh, although a lot of it has improved over the last several years, a lot of these global exchanges have very high quality security mechanism and custody mechanisms. But in general, if you're buying Bitcoin in India, I always recommend to take withdrawals and do self custody. That's what the recommendation is, not to keep, because see, it's not like Indian exchanges are growing and doing well, but the kind of volumes which global exchanges have, they're able to invest in the highest grade safety and security mechanism, and it costs a lot to create that kind of safety protocols. One entrepreneur was telling me it was costing him $4 5 million only on per month on a
Per
safety
month?
per month on a it's not even it's a mid-tier exchange. It's a
Wow.
mid-tier exchange per month on a safety consultant, on a safe who just audits and
Oh, so
ensures
just the consultant, forget about the technology which has to be there to, that is over and above.
on the audit and advisory and everything else.
Wow.
So, but that's the level of cost it
Yeah.
takes because the bounty is very high. There's a lot of money to be
Yeah.
so a lot of hackers are involved. So I think the idea is to just whatever you do, just keep it in your own custody if you can. Um, yeah, that's what we recommend.
Got it. And so it has also happened, Deepak, at least for me, that at least in the last 10, 15, 20 years, uh, many young people have stopped thinking of gold as store of value, and when their parents were thinking about gold and investing in gold, they would also think about saying, hey, that seems like the last or the previous generation's way of investing. Now I invest in stocks and bonds and equity, and not really think about gold as a pure store of value. I think that trend is coming back a little bit. What is your thought on that? Do you have any advice or any thoughts to share on that?
Yeah, of course, young people have not invested a lot in gold. Of course, for young people, last several decades have been big bull run in equities, right?
Yeah,
Last 30, 40 years has been a big bull run in equities globally, not just in
yeah,
India, US, everywhere else. So young people have seen that. The other thing that has happened in the last 30, 40 years is a big bull run in real estate as well.
yeah,
So globally. So there have been avenues where people have made more money in real estate. The young people have seen the uncles who invested in real estate have
yeah,
made more money than they have invested in gold.
yeah.
And people have made more money in equity than they have invested in gold. So there's definitely that thing. But look, that era that happened because the money was artificially made cheaper, and the real cost of capital is much higher than what the money was available at, right? So the equities and real estate got overpriced because of the lower cost of capital. I think that as a cost of capital goes up and readjusts, right? You will see the balance coming back between
Mm,
equity, real estate, gold, Bitcoin, etc. Right? So the cost of capital is artificially kept low for many, many decades, right after 70s. And that has led to all this big boom in equities and real estate. But the era of cheap money is over. The debt is too high globally.
mm,
So, it will lead to hard money. It will lead to higher cost of capital. So therefore, the the ideas or the businesses which have higher productivity to meet that cost of capital will thrive and do very, very well. And this is also a time when AI is coming in, which is anyway higher productive, business,
yeah,
potential. So it's all, to me, it's a unified, theme. It's a unified
mm,
theme. The cost of capital is going. The cost of capital is going up to the sound money cost of capital from artificially lower cost of capital. I believe of the era of bull run in equities is over. To the extent that, of course, there'll be this 5 7 year period where there'll still be a lot of cheap money and wars and all of that, which the bull run may extend for the next few years. But in general, would you have the same thing which has happened in the last 50 60 years happening next 50 years, both in real estate and equities? No. So there'll be a reallocation of this thing. Plus, the AI agents or the robots don't need so much real estate. The factories will be dark factories. All of those things. So the real estate is anyway, uh, over time will be rightly so and should be, because real estate, is supposed to be a productive asset, and real estate became a store of value. A store of value is the worst use case of real estate because it put a drag on GDP and the economies, because no longer good service businesses are viable. For example, in cities like Gurgaon, the good restaurants don't open because the real estate is store of value. So it doesn't justify to open a great restaurant or a great service business because you can't make it viable. So it has been a drag on economies, globally. Really, whichever countries have higher store of value in real estate have had a GDP drag, right? So I think it'll correct that. It'll clean that up. So the real estate has to fall, equities have to fall. Uh, when I say fall, relatively, they will
yeah,
still continue to go up, but they may
yeah,
not have a 20% CAGR. They will have a lesser CAGR and all of that, right? These corrections happen over 40, 50 year periods of time. They don't happen now. This bull run of equities started in 70s, And so Warren Buffett is the best investor in the world, but that's when he started also with this bull run, when the money printing started. And next 70 years, next 60 years, 50 years, if equities are readjusting slowly and real estate is readjusting and the hard cost of capital is going up, right? This is a 30, 40, 50 year adjustment, right? Which is going to happen. So I think sound money is a way to go. So having some allocation in gold and Bitcoin will make sense.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think it's hard and counterintuitive when we've, for the last 40, 50 years, seen examples of uncles, as you said, making money in real estate and equities. And so there has to be a little more thought given to of what is the next 40, 50 years which we'll be looking at, and why those factors, including the cycle theory that you spoke about, the impact of interest rates, impact of cheap capital being available, impact of from being more outward centric countries to trying to look at their own internal economy, and every country trying to look at their own uh, uh, like goods and services of what is produced in their country versus being a global marketplace and exchanging goods and services on a global level. So all of those factors, as you rightly mentioned, would point towards a hard money, and anyone who does the research on this and has some allocation to gold, Bitcoin, or other hard money would likely do well.
Yes, very well put. Thank you.
Great. So, Deepak, do you want to talk a little bit about Satoshi Wealth? What is Satoshi Wealth? And if anyone wants to know more about Satoshi Wealth, where should they look?
Yeah, I can. Of course. So Satoshi Wealth is a hedge fund. We only invest in Bitcoin, as I said, but we uh, you know also trade options in Bitcoin. So the idea is to create an alpha on Bitcoin, which is a very hard thing to do because
Yeah.
Bitcoin itself is an alpha asset. Uh, so we trade the cycles of Bitcoin. We use options to manage the downward drawdown or volatility of Bitcoin. And so in our view, our research says we can create a 3 to 4x alpha on Bitcoin using this trading strategy we have. And our fund is based in Caymans. Our minimum check size is $100,000 into the fund. We take global money into the fund. There's real time liquidity available for people to take money.
So
Right?
there's no lock-in.
There's no lock in, there's no exit load, nothing. Yeah, that's what we do. We'd like people to stay in at least for 4 years. That's what we like
Okay.
because that's when you get the best impact. You can go through the full cycle. Our research is based on where equities are, where money supply is. So we have our own money supply indicators, global M2 indicators. So we have all of these proprietary models on which our research is based on, and basis that we trade cycles. Our view, for example, is slightly different from where the market is right now because we're tracking where the money supply is and where equities are. We believe we are very, very near the top this cycle.
Okay.
All right, this is our view. You know, all views are all views are forecasts and predictions, and all
Yeah.
views have a lot of probability of being wrong. But yeah, I think all the research is pointing to top sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we're carefully watching that, and let's see how it goes.
Great. Thank you so much, Deepak, for taking out time. I'm sure there's so many more topics that we could talk about, but it was so interesting to get your perspective and your nuances and hear your journey on Bitcoin. So thank you once again for your time. Can you share of if anyone wants to reach out to you or look you up, what is the best place to find you?
I'm available on LinkedIn. You can DM me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to kind of reply there. That's the best way to.
Great. Thank you, Deepak, once again, and look forward to having round two soon.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Okay, all right.